Hello, season's greetings, Nadella Lluan, whatever you want to say. Greetings from my very, very cold winter bunker. You can probably see steam coming out of my mouth as I'm talking. So I wanted to do something a bit different this week. And there's been a lot happening in political discourse that made me really angry. Partly because of, I'm not really angry, but it annoys me. So I thought we'd better discuss it briefly. I was going to just open a little blog here called We Need to Talk About NATO. Very festive. But I think it's about time we need to be having some serious discussions about that and what that is, what it's doing, what is really going on, because newsflash, most people probably don't know what it's getting up to. I certainly don't, but I certainly do know for 100% sure that whatever is reported in the UK media about what NATO is doing is not what NATO is doing. So I think we really need to have an honest discussion about it. And so let's get into it. So the blog post says, we need to talk about NATO. Whether we like it or not, people need to start asking some serious questions about what NATO is actually doing, apart from serving, of course, as a peaceful defensive alliance, which we all know it certainly is. Okay, here's something I've been noticing. Behind the slick corporate think tank presentations and branding, where NATO operates on the ground, there are frequently covert operations, huge propaganda campaigns, coups, assassinations, armed militias running around murdering people, false flags, mass civilian casualties, and, coincidentally, US corporations on hand to profit from rebuilding critical infrastructure. Just going to take a break there. I think the thing that set me over the edge was Larry Fink talking about BlackRock going in to fund the rebuilding of Ukraine. I can't remember the precise article I was reading, but it just broke my brain. But I do give links to other things there in the article, so have a look at that. Back to the blog. Not that most people I have met at NATO conferences seem to be aware of any of this. The type of person you meet at a NATO conference is the kind of midwit functionary who believes that Putin has been running the US executive branch since 2015 and that the CIA cares about queer rights in Iran. Just to interject there, no, I am not pro-Russia or pro-Putin, and no, I am definitely not moaning about queer rights in Iran. What I'm suggesting is a lot of the people I've met in and around kind of NATO or those kind of policy think tank conferences, etc., when I was doing my PhD, many of them come out with these kind of things and it is completely disingenuous. I don't think you can be a serious person talking about international affairs and believe that Putin is running the US executive branch. I don't understand. That's the biggest conspiracy theory I think I've ever encountered in the past couple of years. It is completely absurd. Anyway, back to my blog. If you've read my earlier posts, why you should be embarrassed to be associated with UK news, and is Cornish nationalism part of a broader strategy of tension, you'll know I don't shy away from asking challenging questions about power, policy and influence. NATO seems to echo the role that the East India Company played in the former British Empire. It's a bloated, non-governmental institution that meddles in disputes for shareholder profits. The NATO-shaped elephant in the room just got more difficult to ignore, and it should be obvious to anyone paying attention that whatever has happened in Ukraine has certainly been facilitated in large part by NATO. Amanda Sloat, who was Biden's top Europe strategist on the US National Security Council, let slip in a candid moment that what Western policymakers allowed to happen with NATO in Ukraine helped make this devastating war possible. She said that if Ukraine had clearly told Russia it would not join NATO, or if US and UK envoys had advised Ukraine to drop that aspiration, this, quote, may well have prevented the destruction and loss of life, unquote, we've witnessed over the past 3 years. And I put another source there in the blog for you to have a little look at. Not that this is news to anyone with the slightest understanding of NATO's, shall we say, colourful history. To be clear, Sloat's revelations are coming from a conversation with pranksters posing as Ukrainian officials. And yes, it's apparent that while Amanda Sloat has served as an administrative functionary, she seems blissfully unaware of the gritty underside of NATO operations. But here it is. Proof that Western policymakers considered explicitly ruling out NATO membership for Ukraine and then decided against it. That decision, Sloat implies, might have made all the difference. So let's unpack this. For years, people who said NATO expansion was reckless, especially into Ukraine, were shouted down, called conspiracy theorists, or worse, accused of being Kremlin puppets. This isn't fringe commentary anymore, not that it ever was. It's an admission from inside the policy-making apparatus. Sloat just admitted, off the record, that maybe it was a strategic misstep. I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that it wasn't a strategic misstep at all, because chaos, fear and destruction seem to be the common outcomes of all NATO interventions. It's almost like this chaos is the strategy. Some wily conspiracy theorists might call this a strategy of tension. It's hard to know precisely what NATO is doing. So much of their activities are mired in deep reservoirs of PR bullshit and think tank wonk. A lot of this requires faith and devotion. People are obliged to trust an opaque organisation that seems to operate without any meaningful oversight or accountability. I'm not going to do that. How many people have to die before we really start to get an honest look at what NATO has been doing for decades? My personal experience of being on the fringes of empire, where NATO operatives have a documented history of proactively employing the services of some groups who we're all supposed to fear, reminds me that power without accountability is dangerous. Does anyone believe that NATO had nothing to do with overthrowing Assad and installing a member of Al-Qaeda and ISIS as its newly besuited Israel-friendly ruler? I mean, I don't pretend to know everything about the Middle East, but surely anyone looking at how this fucking scumbag Al-Julani is now being paraded around the halls of respectable Western governance like a hero can see this is an utterly shameless PR campaign. Whether it's the Balkans, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya or now Ukraine, NATO's footprint has always left debris in its wake. But of course, as we have always been told, it's just a peaceful defensive alliance. As always, Miathka. Now I've put links to references and to some sources down there and some of the things that I've been looking at. And my experience of being in refugee camps, etc., has shown me really that NATO's association with questionable groups, in particular things like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, that we're all supposed to be scared of, right? They're supposed to be the big bad terrorists. And yet for some reason, they all seem to, get medical treatment from Israeli and Turkish bases, etc., all the way through while Syria was being destroyed from within, as we found from the release of Operation Timber Sycamore, that this was a CIA operation. So, what is NATO actually doing? What is it doing around the world? I cannot answer that question because a lot of what it does is secret. But what I'm suggesting is that considering we seem to have outsourced so much of our foreign policy to NATO, I think we as citizens in the West really need to know what it has been doing and what it is continuing to do. And I don't trust it. I don't think it is doing anything for the interests of British public. I don't think it's doing anything for the interests of Western European public. And I think, more pressure should be put on it. And of course, you can't vote against NATO because most of our political parties throughout Western Europe are very pro-NATO, which tells you something else, I think. Anyway, that's enough of that. Just thought I'd get that out there and maybe start a conversation. If anyone has got better ideas about this or some insight into that I am missing, please do let me know. Leave something in the comments below. And anyway, have a really wonderful Christmas. And I might take next week off, obviously, because I've got busy stuff to do. And I will see you in the new year. And as always, Miath Kar, please leave a like and a comment or whatever, because that really helps me build up kind of and keep me kind of motivated to put some of these blogs about my research out there, because I think it is quite important and some of my students like it. Anyway, I look forward to seeing you in the new year. I hope you have a great time. Bye.